gosh. I love you so much.
I love you too.
We've wanted to do this, I feel like, for so long. And I'm so appreciative that you said, girl, can you come to Texas?
Did you go to Buc-ee's?
I went to Buc-ee's. So you guys,
I made her come just for the ice house and the gas station.
So short aside before we get into the amazingness, okay? The amazingness of this new book, which this is my galley copy, and you can see, guys, I have all these little orange tabs in there. So as an aside, come to Texas. Driving around last night, I have never seen a gas station so big in my life. And I heard about Buc-ee's, and I go into Buc-ee's, and I was like, this is a wonderland of goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like tires, raincoats, fudge.
Squeaky pigs.
Squeaky pig. You got it.
And then the one thing, which I will show you guys, we might actually cut it in, is this beautiful stone piece where you put a wine bottle on top, and then it's a spigot. And I was like, that's the kind of gift a girl like me needs.
You got to trust Buc-ee's.
You got to trust Buc-ee's.
My husband and I are always waiting to see if it goes public. I'm like, we're buying in.
So, okay, getting to the real stuff. I want to start, first of all, this book is incredible. I texted you that. It made such an impact on me. I think this is the message of our time, and I'm so glad we're going to get to peel into it. I want to start with the Maya Angelou quote that you share. You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, the reward is great. Let's dig in with what does true belonging mean and why this message? Why now?
You know, Maya Angelou has been my most steadfast counselor for my entire life. I discovered her probably 30 years ago when I was in college. And I lean into her work. You know how when you find those people that just are unsparing and honest in their work, but they also bring you joy and comfort? She's that for me. And I love everything she does except for that quote. That quote has pissed me off for decades. And I never understood this idea that you're free when you belong nowhere. And as a social scientist, I know that belonging, I know this for sure. Like if you ask me the one thing I know for sure, 200,000 pieces of data. I know in the absence of love and belonging, there's always suffering. That I know for sure. So this quote from her about belonging everywhere, which is really nowhere, is what sets us free, was so troubling to me. But then I started digging in, and I started trying to understand, what does it mean to belong? And I never thought of the concept of belonging. I thought belonging was like, we have a crew.
Yeah. Like a posse or a squad.
Yeah, we have a posse, a squad.
Yeah.
And belonging is something you kind of negotiate with external groups of people. But it's not. What I found very quickly is the rest of that actual quote is part of an interview that she did, where she ended with Bill Moyers, where she ends up saying, you know, he ends up pushing a little bit on and saying, so are you saying that you belong nowhere and to no one? And she said, I belong to Maya. And what I found is that true belonging is a spiritual practice. And it's about the ability to find sacredness in both being a part of something, but also the courage to stand alone. And the people, for those of us who struggle to have the courage to stand alone, especially when we know that we're risking that sense of being a part of something because we disagree.
Yes.
Because we have a different opinion, because we love something different. That's the mark of true belonging, to be able to say, yes, I am a part of something bigger, but I also will stand alone when I need to. And then it was like, oh, shit. You belong everywhere and nowhere. And that is liberation.
Yeah. So braving, which has shown up in previous work, but I feel like it's so perfect here.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through, for anyone who is not familiar with the acronym and what it means, what is braving and how does this help us stay connected to ourselves and others?
So braving is all about trust. And so probably 3 or 4 years ago, in a lot of my leadership work, I probably, and this is something people don't know about me, I probably spend 90% of my time inside big organizations working with C-suite teams. That's what I do most of the time. And so in working with leaders, one of the things that kept coming up is trust building in teams, building trust in a culture. The thing that's hard about trust is if I work for you and you call me in and I'm like really upset because I got passed over for a promotion, and you say to me, look, Brené, you're doing great work, but there are some trust issues. The minute you say anything that I can perceive as I am no longer trustworthy or you don't trust me, we go completely limbic. We go completely out of listening with our prefrontal cortex to listening, to fight, flight, freeze, defend. because our trust is our integrity. It's who we are. So I kept wondering, like, when we talk about trust, what are we actually talking about? Like, what could you call me into your office and say to me that would be more helpful, more impactful and productive than we have trust issues or I don't trust you? So we dug into the data to figure out, what is trust? What do we mean when we say trust? And what I found are there are 7 elements that we're talking about when we talk about trust. And these are observable and measurable. These are what we can talk about with each other. So BRAVING is the acronym we use. B is boundaries. You set boundaries. When you don't know what they are, you ask. You're clear about what's okay and not okay, which is, as you know, so hard for people.
Yeah.
Boundaries are really hard. Reliability is the R. You do what you say and you say what you do. The big hard thing about reliability is you're not hustling for worthiness. So you're not completely overcommitting and not delivering.
Yes.
That's the reliability issue. A is accountability. You don't back channel and blame. You hold people accountable in a straightforward way. V, which I think is really interesting, is the vault.
Oh, the vault. Can we talk about the vault for a second?
Vault.
The vault is so huge because in this culture and in this time, I say this with my friends all the time, like, I'm going to tell you something and it's got to stay in the vault.
Right.
It has to stay in the vault. And once that goes, if anyone violates that, and I've had it happen before, something shuts down in me.
Oh, it does. It's hard to come back from it.
Yeah.
What people don't understand about the vault that's really interesting to me too is that you call me in and you say, I don't understand why I got the position. You say, look, we've got some trust issues that we need to work through specifically. I want to talk about confidentiality in the vault. And I look at you and like, Marie, I have never shared a single thing that you have told me in the 10 years we've known each other. And you look back at me and say, yes, but you come in here on a regular basis and share things with me that are not yours to share. It's the other side of confidentiality. It is not only do you not talk out of school between us, you don't come in here and say, hey, look, I know what's going on with John, blah, blah, or this is what's happening with, So, because when I do that, and I do that to get connection with you, I do that as a bid for connection. Let me tell you what's going on that you don't know about.
Yeah.
But when I walk out of the office, you trust me less because I'm using stories that are not mine as currency.
Yes.
So we've got the vault. Then we go to I, integrity, which is choosing courage over comfort, practicing your values. And this is a big one. And I think we have this in common. And I love this about you. It's choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, and easy. Yeah. We have a culture of fun, fast, and easy. We have a culture of people who don't do discomfort. And I've never achieved a single thing in my career or life comfortably.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. And then we go to N for non-judgment. You can ask for help without feeling judged, and I can ask for help without judging myself. And then generosity, which I think is probably the biggest, hardest one for me sometimes, which is when something happens, I assume positive intent. So if things go sideways between us, I'm like, damn it, Marie, I'm so pissed off. I go and say, let me assume the best. Help me understand what happened, Marie. I thought we had a plan around this.
Yes.
And I give you a chance, a benefit of the doubt before I launch into my anger.
Yeah, I think that one's probably the most difficult for me as well. The one I can see where I instantly jump to conclusions, or I can watch my mind go to the worst possible scenario. I did it with my family the other night. Like my parents weren't responding to a particular text, and I made up this entire narrative about what that meant. And they're like, oh, we were just putting away groceries. And I'm like, there, it happened again.
We do it all day, every day. I mean, I have a story. That's human nature. That's wiring. In the absence of data, we will always make up stories.
Yes.
And so I think for Braving the Wilderness, the whole idea of the wilderness being those times when we stand alone and those times when we go out on a limb, the times we walk away from what we know, our ideological bunkers and our beliefs, braving is the tool to help us manage the wilderness.
It's so useful and it's so concrete and it's a checklist.
Yeah, it's a checklist.
We can hold that. I can hold that for myself to say, am I in alignment with me?
Right.
And am I feeling good about how I'm moving through the world?
Right.
And that brings me, I think, one of the most impactful, and there's so much wisdom in this book, but what I want to move on to is people are hard to hate close up, move in. This concept of rehumanizing, not dehumanizing, it got me in the heart. It got me in the gut, especially what's happening now in our world. There's something that you wrote, and I want to read it because it is the core of ways that I've struggled in the past few years, not knowing how to approach conversations, not knowing how to invite people into a conversation, and to really take a hard look at my own biases and my own angers and how I would like the world to be. You wrote, if you are offended or hurt when you hear Hillary Clinton or Maxine Waters called a bitch, a whore, or the C word, you should be equally offended and hurt when you hear those same words used to describe Ivanka Trump, Kellyanne Conway, or Theresa May. When the President of the United States calls women dogs or talks about grabbing pussy, we should get chills down our spine and resistance flowing through our veins. When people call the President of the United States a pig, we should reject that language regardless of our politics and demand discourse that doesn't make people subhuman. I want that to be everywhere.
God, it's so hard.
It's so hard.
It's like,
but it's so
I want to
important.
take your iPad and just like research or heal myself. It's hard as hell because let me tell you about dehumanization and my concern about it, and as I've witnessed it. Dehumanization is a very slippery, dangerous process. And I'll tell you where it starts. We are actually hardwired neurobiologically to not hurt one another. It goes against our human nature to treat each other, to be violent, rape, torture, degradation, humiliation. It actually goes against who we are. And we're wired that way to protect the species. We're a social species. We need each other. We're completely dependent on each other. The process of dehumanization is the process that we use to slowly, primarily using words and images, nothing more. Dehumanization is the process of slowly moving people out of, I want to use this table as an example, or this coffee. So here's a group of people that we want to harm. It's a group of people that we hate, a group of people that a leader has told us, here, this tea right here is the cause of all your pain and suffering. So we hate these people and we want to hurt them and we want to see them diminished. But they're within this moral protective zone that we have as humans. So slowly over time, we start using words and images of them that dehumanize them, that move them slowly and slowly and slowly into what we call moral exclusion. They no longer are protected by what we believe is human basic rights. And we see the process of dehumanization at the core of every genocide recorded in history. The Nazis used, I think the word is Untermenschen. It's subhuman to describe Jews. Every conflict you can see. And so what's happening in our country right now, from the leadership to the resistance, no one has high ground here. We are slowly allowing ourselves to start using dehumanizing language to describe people with whom we disagree.
Yes.
Which then makes it okay to physically hurt them. And when we use dehumanizing language, it says much more about us than the people that we're railing against. And I think, honestly, it chips away at our soul.